At this point, we've talked about the aspect of trying to develop training methodologies that really are big picture in today's picture as you go through, so that we were training for today and tomorrow. We've looked at 5 different methodologies that you have to have for training. We talked about the ADDIE model, which really is a pretty good anachronism to go through and look on the different ways of training. But now let's look at the measuring and evaluating training effectiveness. You always want to go back and make certain the training that you're doing isn't just a bunch of hot air used inside of a room, but it actually is something that's consequential to the success of the employee and the organization, and that you're getting the return on investment you need of putting that money into the time as you go through. I went through and we had this one training that I felt really wasn't very, very good in the process. We had 4,400 employees as you go through, and we took a big component of it, about 800 employees off on a union-led team building activity, which meant that up to 800 employees took the day off. So I calculated the money because I thought it was totally ineffective. By the time I was done, the cost for that one day off cost us anywhere, it could depends how many people actually attended that one day, but the cost for us to have that training really came close to almost $100,000 just for one day for training that I viewed as not highly effective whatsoever. So pay attention as to what is the return on investment. Don't just have somebody go off and have a fun time. There should be a purpose with a planned outcome as you go through. So look for some of the different things as to what you're looking for. Are there cognitive outcomes in the process of processing things in your head? Are there skills that people learn in the process? What kind of results you get? What is going to be the overall value? If you sit down there and invest $100,000 in training, do you sit down there and get $200,000 in value out of it because people learn skills, because of the fact there's less absenteeism, because they're more motivated to do the work as you go through? So pay attention to what's involved. Here's an example: cognitive outcomes. What's measured? Did they acquire knowledge? How is it measured? I sit down and do a test, a simple test as you go through, even a 10 question test in the process. Look at safety rules, electrical principles. They learn lockout, tagout. They learn how to use a ladder properly as you go through. They learn how to sit down there and access their keyboard. Do you have less ergonomic issues? Do you have less carpal tunnel issues as you go through? You want to really sit down and look as to how did the knowledge you provide, what was the exact outcome, and did you save money doing it? There should be some type of dollar figure. You can sit down and say, our training saved the company that amount of money in the process. We have a reduction in overall workers' comp claims because of this, because people are working safely. The results: what does the company pay out? What is the observation? What's the data? What's the economic value of the training as you go through? So a lot of designs as you go through, there's post-tests. Sometimes you test them before the training and test them after as you go through. I've seen people do that. And to be honest about it, it's pretty easy to do that because sometimes you weren't even thinking about the topic. At the end of the test, you're actually thinking about the topic and you're more focused. And yes, you may have known some of that thing, but really that the pre-test, post-test is a pretty effective tool to see if the training program, if it's being evaluated, if it's worthwhile. Post-test only with a comparison group, pre-test posted with a comparison group. Sometimes you want to have a group here and a group here and just test them differently as you go through and make certain that things are coming across really well. On the return on investment, did the outcomes place a value on the outcomes? Was there a change in performance? You have to measure that, but you have to have supervisors engaged to measure that as you go through. And what is the annual training cost as you go through? Look on return on investment, what's happening. Here's an example as you go through when you're sending somebody to a different country. This is really critical for training. You need to prepare them for a cultural difference between the home office or whatever office they're at and going someplace else, because even something small can become something big, either on purpose or accidentally as you go through. So that being said, make certain you're preparing them to sit down there, be away from their environment they were raised in, to go live in another place for 1, 2, or 3 years as you go through. And then don't isolate them from promotional opportunities. Make certain you know that. But in the meantime, you have to prepare them for a cross-cultural preparation as you go through. What are the proper customs? When do you talk business? Do you start talking business at the beginning of the lunch like too many Americans do? Or do you sit there and talk business at the very end when you're having something to drink and a dessert to eat in the process? If you start that in South America, by just immediate blabbing into business, you're going to lose the client in the process and anger some people. If you start on time even, that also is offensive as you go through. So always look on the different aspects as how is it there? How is it in Japan? How is it in China? How is it in Europe? What are the different aspects of cross-cultural preparation? Make certain people are sensitive. They might have to go through and believe this is the right way of doing it, but other people do. So you don't want to offend them in the process as you go through just because you're this culture. Don't sit down and try to impose your culture on somebody else, because of the fact they're going to react against you and your actions, and as well as the company, if that's how you come across. So make certain they're motivated to succeed. Make certain they're supported by their family to go to a different country. If they have family coming with them, that they're really on board. Sometimes you bring the family in the training too as well to make certain they're ready to have a different culture in the process. On pre-departure, make certain whatever language training they have as you go through, make certain you include the family in the process. Talk about the plans and positions they can expect when they return, because they have this additional experience as you go through. Cross-cultural, a lot of times when they first come in, you need to have an orientation in that country to rehash the things you talked about, especially a week or two after they arrive, because this is a new thing for them. And frankly, it's absolutely terrifying as you go through, because all of a sudden now you realize, oh, I can't escape. I can't wake up on my old bed. I can't go out to my coffee shop, into my Starbucks and get my coffee. I have to go to a different kind of coffee shop. Starbucks isn't even here. Oh my gosh, what do I do? Okay, and frankly, it sounds funny in class, but in the real life, this is a real issue because of the fact that people are speaking a different language sometimes, and you're going in and you're trying to sit down there and process, what are they saying? What are they saying? Oh yeah, they're saying this. And you may have some of the basic language you may know, and all of a sudden now you have to learn how to do it as you go through. Even when they're speaking the same language, sometimes the lingo, you don't even understand what they're saying, huh? In the process. So that being said, always go through the aspect of making certain there's a lot of training, especially if they're going to a different country. On the preparation phase, as you go through high levels of stress and anxiety upon return, once they come back into the country, they may have to adjust to a lower standard of living because they got a nice big bonus, or their regular salary here actually translated into something very wealthy in that country, and they come back over here, it's back to business as usual, and all of a sudden now they may make exactly the same amount of money, but it doesn't go as far in their home country as you go through. And a lot of times, if you don't do this right, people may decide to leave the company and pursue something else. Diversity training, make certain you're involved in inclusion. You want to reduce unconscious bias. All of us are raised thinking that the culture we're raised in is the best one, because that's what we know. I don't know about you, but I like my culture as you go through. But I also like to open my own mind to explore other ones, because some people have a fascinating background. Now, I just happen to like people. I hope you do as well. But I always have to make certain that I'm not trying to pose my values and wills on other people. I want to make certain that I'm conscious of my unconscious bias as you go through, thinking that I have the best way of life in the process. Other people are different. Be open to what they're going through as you go through. Make certain you have a lot of diversity, inclusion in your company, but also diversity can enhance performance. Make sure you're paying attention to cognitive outcomes, effective outcomes as you go through, behavioral outcomes. When you sit down there and have somebody engage, a lot of times we all prefer to have people that agree with us, but sometimes we become a better person when somebody disagrees, and it helps us open our mind as to what other opportunities are out there, perspectives, by listening to others. So diversity training not only is about religion, ethnicity, color of skin, or anything else. It's about opening the mind up as a whole and listening to the minds of other people, and forgetting about the outside, but listening to what's coming in as to how your company can best thrive in the process by being inclusive as you go through. So measuring as you go through, is training worthwhile? How do you measure it? What are the outcomes? What's the return on investment? And making certain the trainers and the audience are culturally involved, and they know what's going on in the process, so they're ready for the next step of themselves and the company. Take care.